Hello there, my name is Connor McLeod, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the 2013 Target credit card breach. So a little background information and introduction to the attack. In 2013, the last 2 months is estimated as when it occurred. Target suffered a massive cyber attack that resulted in the breach of their customer service database and resulted in millions of individuals' credit card information being stolen. As of a 2017 report carried out by Target themselves, they have estimated that over 41 million customers' credit card accounts and debit card information was stolen off of their servers, and that up to 70 million individuals' personal information that had been collected by Target was made vulnerable and accessible by the assailants. And as of that same 2017 report, Target has estimated that $292 million worth of damage had been inflicted by the assailants. And that number has probably risen since then, as that was well over a year ago. So a little bit of information about the parties that were involved in the attack was, of course, the more than likely group of cyber assailants that carried out the attack, and a third-party heating and ventilation company, Fazio Mechanical Services, that were directly contracted with Target for their heating and ventilation services. And then, of course, the big fish of the group, Target. So I titled this slide "Setting the Stage" because it kind of talks a little bit about the events that led up to the attack and I guess the actions carried out by the cyber assailants that allowed for the attack to happen. So the first thing is the third-party contractor that Target had used, Fazio Mechanical Services, for their heating and ventilation and cooling. They believe that the cyber assailants had gained access to Fazio Mechanical Services network through a phishing attempt. One of their employees had typed in a password in an infected device, and this gave them full access to their network. And it was reported that through some data mining, they found that there had been a Citadel Trojan virus that was installed on to Fazio Mechanical Services network that gave them access to the credentials that they used in order to get onto networks or Target's network. And the biggest, I guess you could say, the biggest reason that the attack was so successful, and probably the biggest preventative measure that could have been taken to stop it, was Target Corporation's network was so poorly segmented that once the assailants had gained access to the heating and ventilation systems, they quickly found a route into the customer service database that had all the credit card information stored onto it. And as I said, this gave the cyber attackers both physical and remote access to Fazio Mechanical Services network, but also to Target's network that they had gained credentials through the phishing attack. So here we have a little graphic about the timeline or estimated timeline that they believe that the attack occurred through. You can see all the way in September at an unspecified date, they believe that the attackers had successfully carried out a phishing attempt to gain access to Fazio Mechanical Services network. Move forward into the middle of November, and that is when they had estimated that the attackers broke into Target's network and began to install malware onto their network and POS systems, which is how they gained access to card information. Towards the later end of November, you see that the POS systems were fully infected and compromised, and the attackers began to test data exfiltration and collection of card information to make sure that everything was working out all right as they intended before carrying out the actual attack. And you'll see here that underneath the November 30th area, you'll see that Symantec and FireEye alerts triggered. Those were the two primary firewall systems that were put into place for Target Corporation's network. And a lot of alerts were reported to have popped up, and in later investigations done by the Department of Justice, they found that the network administrators were very ignorant of these alerts and almost didn't even consider it as cause for concern. They considered it more of a software glitch, which proved to be false. And as you see, as December comes around, you can see that the attackers began to exfiltrate data from Target's network, and again, more alerts being popped up from their firewall and anti-theft systems, which were again neglected. And you can see that roughly a month through the attack being carried out, that the systems were finally cleaned of the malware, but too little, too late. So the initial attack, what happened? Fazio Mechanical Service, like I said, was the third-party contractor that Target was using for their heating, cooling, and ventilation. The assailants infected Fazio Mechanical with malware that gave them credentials to Target's networking systems, but just specifically for the heating and ventilation systems on their network that monitored the ventilation of the primary building. But quickly they found a way into your customer database service. Target not only had a very old and outdated network that had not been updated properly, it was very primitive in its segmentation. There was almost none at all. So the assailants quickly found a way to gain access to their systems. Their Ariba billing systems was the product or the software that Target had been using in order to keep their credit information, their credit card and debit card information in their system. And the attack gave basically full remote and physical access to these servers. So the infection that was carried out by the cyber assailants on Target's end, it was a variant of an already known malware that infected point of sales terminals and credit machines called Black POS. And of course, Black POS had been around and known for already, but there was a lot of variation and additions made to the malware that basically created a whole nother beast in its own. From Krebs on Security, we have a little quote here where he talks about the design of the malware, how it was intended to be installed on POS devices and records all credit and debit card information being swiped through the POS terminals. And of course, they also gained access because of the poor network segmentation to the customer service databases that housed all the card information that Target had collected. One of the big variants, one of the big changes that had been made to the Black POS malware was the name that it registered on Windows machines that the POS terminals were running through. POS WDS is what it would register. So it kind of mimicked a lot of other legitimate services that you would see on the registry systems, which was another way that they managed to pass on by the watchful eye of their anti-theft systems that were in place. And like I said, it infects the POS terminals and the card readers attached to them. So another major addition to the Black POS system that had been added on in this variant was whenever a critical string would pop up in the malware detection and the anti-theft systems and the firewalls, the strings would be rearranged to a known string that would run to the system anyways to hide any detection and to basically mask the malware's constant running on the system. Data encryption was another way that the Black POS variant was very effective at hiding itself on the network. It bypassed a lot of the data loss prevention systems that were in place. And although the firewall systems that were covering the network did send a lot of alerts warning about possible vulnerabilities, a lot of them were overlooked by network administrators for Target. And lastly, and arguably one of the cleverest ways that the malware managed to bypass any big red flags was that they made sure to limit any data exfiltration out of Target servers to a time where operation hours were busiest, where there would be the most data being logged into their system, and it would be very difficult to manually go through and detect any anomalies in the logs for Target Corporation sales. So the actual removal of the data system, as we continue on from that last point, the POS malware, it scanned the card information, and it also collected data from the actual data information server. And the stolen data from the cards was actually sent to an internal data repository within Target's network. And what this did was it made it a lot more difficult to detect anything going wrong, as there wasn't a constant stream of data being sent out of Target's server to be detected. They basically compiled in a massive group on one server that was inside their network, and then made a mass exfiltration out of the network with all that data once they had collected what they wanted. And again, during peak hours of business operation, the data was sent to the closest file transfer server, and that is how they managed to avoid a constant stream of data being sent out, which would have been a big red flag to any network administrator. So the end result of the attack, it is estimated that 41 million and counting individual card data was stolen off of their data network, and of the personal information of up to 70 individuals that Target had collected information on. So some of the damages that had been done and the effects of the attack, Target suffered a 46% decrease in fourth quarter earnings in 2013. The 2013 fiscal year annual report for Target showed a massive drop, which is probably related to people not wanting to shop at Target after the incident. To date, Target has paid out over $153 million worth of settlements to both individuals and other corporations. And as of 2017, Target has publicly announced a net loss of $292 million from the incident. So moving on to some of the key issues of the attack and what the big red flags that should be indicators of big problems was the lack of the third-party member security. Fazio Mechanical Services had very little authentication to get into their network, and it made it much easier for a group of assailants to gain access to their credentials, which in turn would give them an attempted means of accessing Target's network. The biggest issue of them all, as I've already said, was poor network segmentation. This is almost 101 for networking and keeping a network secure, is making sure that there's more loops to jump through when you're trying to access more sensitive parts of the network, such as the data services that carry out or that hold credit card information of customers. And again, the failure by network administrators and security professionals that were working with Target Corporation to address the breach warnings that were sent by their anti-fraud systems, and more importantly, by their two firewall softwares that were constantly ringing out alerts that data was being exfiltrated to one specific server within their network. And again, when all that data was, when the mass exfiltration of data went out to the nearest file transfer server. So some preventative measures that we can pull from the incident is the implementation of proper virtual local area network segmentation. This is pretty standard when dealing with any sensitive information on a server, is making sure that you have multiple servers that are contained within one big network, and to ensure that it is not capable of accessing those sensitive informations from, say, a network that is intended only for heating and ventilation systems. Another preventative measure that more than likely would have been effective is the implementation of multi-step authentication for third-party vendors when gaining access to networks within Target's system. Making sure that there's multiple levels of authentication, multiple credential logins that are necessary in order to ensure that they cannot gain access to the data that's holding credit card information. And lastly, proper attention to the firewall warnings and the loss prevention systems that were in place for Target, as any retailer has, in dealing with sensitive personal information. And then my references. I hope you guys learned something and enjoyed the video, and see you tomorrow.